Okay, this is my Chapter 3 lecture, which will be in several parts. I have set up just a little lecture demo here. And as you can see, I have a form that I've renamed to FRM main. I've set the startup position to center screen. I changed the text. That's all I've done to it. I got the beginning of my controls here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 labels. Labels do not accept input, nor do they accept focus from the user. In other words, they can't accept input, so they can never take focus. A text box can, because it can. That's what it's for. It's input, not for output, typically. So I have 3 text boxes for user input, and I have 2 buttons. And I haven't done anything much to these, except when I did these labels, I set auto size to false because I don't like auto size. And the reason is, I think I may have told you this before, but if you have auto size to true, which is the default, you take the text out of it and click off of it, you can't really see it unless you window select. So that's why I don't like it. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to slide this up a little bit, and I'm going to change the uh, text position, I think it's called, because it's always, where is it? Text align property. It's always upper left. I don't like that. I like middle left if I want to left align it. So I'm going to take, and I could have done all these at once. These are common properties. So you can come over here if it's a common property and set it all at one time, and you only have to do it one time. So there we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and change the size. Well, let's see what I got here. Why did that get so big? Is auto size off on all of these? Let's see. Yes. I don't know why that one got big like that. We don't need it that big. There we go. So I've got my labels. Now I need to change some control names. You never leave the default name in here, okay? I'm going to call this, since I'm going to be changing what this program does, I'm just going to call this label 1 because they're really just, it's a label for the first text box. I just don't like default names. The first one I'm going to deal with, the first little application here, I'll call this in label 2. I'm kind of doing this as I go. And label 3. Remember that the label name of the object, the name of the object, the label name, is different from the label text property. People get confused with that, okay? Label name, look at me, label 3. And this is label, I'm going to call this label 4. And the other one is actually does something. So I'm not going to call it label 5. I'm going to call it LBL output because that's what it's going to get. All right. I'm going to call, let's see, I'm probably going to need to move these over a little bit right here. Let's see if I can't make this a little bit bigger. Notice the vertical and horizontal snaps. They help you align everything. Okay, mine's probably not perfect, but I guess it's okay. All right, so what am I going to call this? What am I going to have for text? Well, this one's going to describe the text box adjacent to it. So it's an output only. It's going to tell the user what's on the right of it, or above it or below it, wherever it happens to be located. This would be first name. We're going to look at strings first, kind of like the textbook does. Now, my lectures are not going to be everything that's in this chapter. You're going to have to work some of that out yourselves. But I'm going to try to give you some ideas about some things that maybe the textbook may have presented a little bit differently. All right, this is going to be middle. Whoops. Middle name. And always end these with a colon by default. And that one's not long enough, so maybe if I do it like this, middle init. Let's do that for middle initial. See if that works. That did work. And last name. See how you're always trying to kind of go, design as you go sometimes. the GUI. Got to have some idea about what you need for input and output, obviously. But your program specification or the problem you're trying to solve will give you that. They'll tell you how many inputs to expect. Well, you got to have somewhere to put that. I'm going to call this full name. Okay. Now this one doesn't need any kind of text in it at the moment. We're going to do that when we do our program here. Okay, so let's go up to the border. I'm going to change the border style on this, the border style property, to fixed 3D. Kind of makes it stand out a bit. Let's see. Okay, that's good enough. Now let me do the buttons. This is not going to be real fancy. Let's rename the button. We'll call this button BTN action because it's going to do different things depending on my examples. Here I'll just say for this first one, text. Where's text? There it is. Get name. And we could use a hot key on every one or two. I could use an ampersand. This would be your keystroke alt combination. So wherever you put the ampersand, if you put it in front of this E, the user can use Alt E to actually fire the click event, and that's for people with certain disabilities, and you'll have to get used to doing that. Or it's just people don't want to grab the mouse and click it, they just hit Alt E, and that'll get that. And then this is my exit button. It's going to exit no matter what. Exit. Remember that the name property is different than the text property. They're totally different. And this one will be, we'll put our ampersand in front of the X, which is by default what they do in most of these applications, so that Alt X is your key combination. Let's save it, run it, and see if we have any errors. There's no functionality here yet, just the input. It's going to take a while, I'm afraid. And I bet my antivirus is going to pop up, start rearing its ugly head. This is not the fastest computer in the world. It's a i5 and it's got 4 gigs of RAM, so it's not real spiffy by any stretch. Okay, anytime now. I guess I can drink coffee while I'm waiting, right? There it is. Okay, notice that the text box has focus. That means there's a cursor in there that's ready to accept input. Labels cannot accept focus. When we get into your tab order at the end of the chapter, you'll see what I mean. Okay, so if I tab through here, notice the tab order is all out of whack. It should go here, 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 and here. Now we will address that shortly. I'm not going to try to change it right now because we're not ready for that. All right, first thing we should do is code the exit button. I need a click event for these buttons. You can come over here. This is your event window. I can double click on click. It will add the event handler in code, and I can put my exit code in there. However, if it's the default event of a control, you can just double click on it. Like the form default event is load. So if I double click on the form, it's going to pop up the code window and show me the load event. And now you don't want to do that unless you want to put some code in there, right? So if I come over here to the properties again, let's see what we got. Load is that's the default event for the form. Now I'm just going to go ahead and double click on this. It's easy, but remember that you can get to it through the properties window over here because you don't always want to do the default event. There are tons of events that you can do: mouse up, mouse down, mouse over, click. There's all sorts of things you can trap and run and put code in. So let's double click on the event button, and there it created this event, button exit click event. Now there is a pointer that you can use rather than the form name, and I do it because if you got multiple instances of your application, this pointer, which is THIS, points to the current instance of whichever one is running, it points to that instance of the application. So I always use this, which is the default pointer to the application form, dot, I think it's exit, close, excuse me. Sorry, hang on just a minute. Close, not enabled. So I'll do C, and it'll take me to the C's, and there should be a close button here. There it is, a close method. And remember that all of your lines have to end in a semicolon in C# and C++. So there you go. That should close it. That's pretty easy. Let's go back to design view. Now you can always toggle between these two like this. Go to code view, and then you can just go here like that. All right, or you can come over here and open up your design view, designer. Okay, so the problem we have to solve here is the user's going to be able to type in their first name, their last name, their middle name, and their last name, and they're going to be able to output, and I'm going to have to make this a little bit bigger, their entire name from those three names. We're going to concatenate or join those strings together and output them to this label. Now, something else you want to know about, once you get your form kind of designed like this, it's really easy, especially if you're moving these things using coordinates, okay, because you can do that if you need more precise control over how they're on the form. It's really easy to click one and drag it a little bit, or click 2 or 3 and window them and just move them all out of the way and mess everything up. So let's see, right click, lock controls. If you just right click on the form and click lock controls, you can't move them at that point, okay? I don't know if I showed you that or not before. All right, get name, that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to click on get name, and that created a click event for my button action. So what I want to do, I'm going to create a local variable. Now any variables that are defined within these event handlers are only visible and only exist inside of these things. Okay, that's what we call lifetime and scope. And it gets into that a little bit later in the chapter. So I'm going to create a local variable of type string called full name. All right, and then I'm going to assign that. Always assign something to these variables when you declare them, regardless of where you declare them, to get the garbage out of there. Now, I'm going to use, you could use an empty string here like this. It would work just fine, but there's a better way to do it, because if you're looking at this and you're a developer, you can't tell if there's a space in there or not. But there's a method or property of the string object called empty that will do the same thing, and you can actually tell what that is. I don't know if that's just a property. It's not a method, so it didn't have an argument list. Okay, now what we need to do here is we need to go ahead and concatenate and grab the text, the string, out of the text property for each one of those labels, excuse me, text boxes. So there's, I forgot to rename them. See that? My fault. A pox upon me for a clumsy lout. So, first name. This will be txt middle init. Always rename your controls before you get to the coding point. That's not an acceptable thing. I shouldn't be doing that. Should have known better. And I'll tell you why, because if you click on an event, or if you add an event and then change it later, it's not going to be associated with the right event because the name's changed. And that's a whole other can of worms. So it could be done. I mean, I can show you how to do it. It's not that bad, but it's just something we don't want to deal with if you don't have to. Sometimes you make mistakes like I just did. This will be last name. All right, back to my code. So full name is my string variable. And I mean, I could have gone a shorter route and just assigned it straight into the label, but we're going to do it this way for now. Text, and IntelliSense pops up and tells me I have three objects that start with txt. Where is the string of the input stored there? It's in the text property, and it's always of type string. Okay, so when the user types in there, that's where it goes. So it's text. What is the concatenation symbol from your chapter? It's the plus sign. So what I'll show you the order in which this is evaluated. We need to put a space in there, don't we? Otherwise, all three of those names are going to run together. So then it's text middle init, middle initial, and another space. And then, now if I wanted to here, I could just do this. I could just do enter and keep going if I don't want it to run all the way across the screen and have to scroll over. Remember that the only time it looks at something as being the end of a line is when you put a semicolon. So I can just keep going. I could have 4 or 5 assignment lines here and then finally end it with the semicolon for that line. And then plus, it may want me to put down the other line, I don't know. Text last name, okay, semicolon. All right, I could put it up here. I was just going to show you that. It's not that long. All righty. Now what are we going to do? Now that we have all that done, we're going to have to output that text, that whole name, to our label, which we have assigned for that, and that's called label output or LBL output. So LBL output. What's the name? What's the property that's going to contain text? Text property. Can't put the name in there. That won't work. You got to do the name and the property. And what's the name of this string variable here? Full name. Let's save it and let's run it. Okay. All right. So put my name in there. Oh, I forgot the tab order's out of whack. I won't tell you what that's for. It's not Abraham. Maybe you can figure it out. I bet you already know. You already have that opinion of me. All right. So let's click get name and see what happens. Ooh, something happened. Wasn't the right thing, was it? Let's see why. Let's see why. Let's put a breakpoint here. Whenever you're in doubt, put a breakpoint. Okay. All right. So you do that by clicking in this area over here. F5 to run it. I should have just hard coded this in here so I wouldn't have to keep typing it. All right. What's going to happen is when I fire this event, or when the event gets fired by the clicking of the button, this is going to trap that message from Windows, and it's going to start running the code in there if there's anything in there. So let's see what we got here. Now, when you're in break mode and debug mode, it'll put some default stuff here, like full name, but you can add other things in here. I could actually just go here and put this in there if I wanted to, see what's in there. You can hover over it as well if you want to. See? Tells me what the text property is. Oh, you see what I did wrong? I see what I did wrong. I forgot to put the text property in there. I just used the names, which will not work. It's easy to do, isn't it? Well, I got to show you anyway. All right, so now press F10 to step through.